As the last remnants of sunlight faded from the horizon, John Markson stepped out of the dusty, worn-out sedan and onto the cracked asphalt of the desolate highway. The faded sign above the rundown diner read Eddie's Oasis, in crooked, rusty letters. It was the only sign of life for miles around, a beacon of hope in the vast expanse of the Mojave Desert. John stretched his lanky frame, feeling the weariness of the long drive seeping into his bones. He had been on the road for days, ever since the agency had pulled him from the suspended animation tank. The mission briefing had been minimal, just a cryptic message about a temporal anomaly in the vicinity of Eddie's Oasis. John's expertise in chronophysics made him the only man for the job. As he entered the diner, the bell above the door jangled, and the smell of stale coffee and grease enveloped him. The patrons, a handful of truckers and locals, looked up from their cups, their faces a mix of curiosity and hostility. John's agency-issued sunglasses and black leather jacket seemed out of place in this dusty, forgotten corner of the world. Eddie himself, a gruff, burly man with a scruffy beard, sauntered out from behind the counter. "What can I get ya, friend?" he asked, eyeing John's attire. John flashed a weary smile. "Just coffee, black, and information. Have you noticed anything unusual around here lately?" Eddie's expression turned guarded, and he nodded curtly. "You mean like the strange lights in the sky? Or the folk who just disappeared?" John's ears perked up, and he leaned in, his eyes locked on Eddie's. "Tell me more." Eddie hesitated, glancing around the diner as if fearful of being overheard. "It started a few weeks ago," he said, his voice low. "People would come in just like you, asking questions. Then they'd vanish. Some said they saw them getting into a black sedan, but I never saw it myself. And the lights, they're like nothing I've ever seen. Pulsing, swirling colors that seem to draw you in." John's grip on his coffee cup tightened. Temporal anomalies often manifested as disturbances in the visual spectrum. He made a mental note to scan for chronon particles in the area. As he listened to Eddie's tale, John's gaze wandered to a young woman sitting alone at the counter, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that bordered on hostility. She was an anomaly in this dusty oasis, her olive skin and dark hair a stark contrast to the sun-weathered faces of the locals. Eddie's voice brought John back to the conversation. "You're not from around here, are you?" the diner owner asked, his tone laced with suspicion. John flashed a disarming smile. "Just a researcher, Eddie. I'm trying to understand what's happening in this area." The woman at the counter shifted, her eyes never leaving John's face. For a moment, he felt like an insect under a microscope. Eddie nodded slowly. "If you're looking for answers, you might want to talk to Old Tom. He's been around here longer than anyone, knows more about this place than he's letting on." John's eyes locked onto the woman, who still watched him with an unnerving intensity. He sensed that she was more than just a curious bystander, that she was somehow connected to the anomaly he was investigating. "I think I'll take your advice, Eddie," John said, his voice measured. "Where can I find Old Tom?" Eddie jerked a thumb toward the door. "You'll find him at the old windmill on the outskirts of town. But be careful, friend. Old Tom's not one to trifle with." As John stepped out of the diner, the desert sun beat down on him like a physical force. The woman from the counter was already outside, leaning against the sedan, her eyes fixed on him with an unblinking gaze. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, her voice low and husky. John's instincts told him to be cautious. There was something about her that didn't add up. "Just passing through," he replied, his tone neutral. The woman pushed off from the sedan, her movements fluid and cat-like. "My name is Ava. I've been waiting for you." John's hand instinctively drifted to the agency-issue pistol holstered beneath his jacket. "Waiting for me?" Ava's smile was a subtle, enigmatic thing. "You're looking for answers, Mr. Markson. I can help you find them." John's eyes narrowed. How did she know his name? "What do you know about the anomaly?" Ava's gaze seemed to bore into his very soul. "I know it's not what you think it is. It's not just a temporal anomaly. It's a doorway." John's grip on his pistol tightened. "A doorway to where?" He knew from experience that the agency didn't dispatch agents to investigate minor chrono rifts. This was something bigger. "I think we should talk to old Tom," Ava said, her voice dripping with an unsettling intensity. "He can show us the way." John hesitated, unsure if he should trust this enigmatic woman. But something about her words resonated deep within him. He nodded, and together they set off toward the old windmill on the outskirts of town, the Mojave sun beating down on them like a hammer. As they walked, John couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into a maelstrom, one from which there was no escape. The windmill loomed ahead, its crumbling walls seeming to whisper secrets on the desert wind. Old Tom's eyes gleamed with a knowing intensity as he opened the creaky door of the windmill. "Welcome, John Markson," he said, his voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "I've been expecting you." John's instincts told him to be cautious, but Ava's presence at his side seemed to calm the old man. Tom beckoned them inside, and they followed him into the dimly lit interior of the windmill. The air was thick with the scent of old machinery and decay. Tom led them to a narrow staircase that spiraled down into the darkness. "The answers you seek are below," he said, his eyes glinting with a knowing light. As they descended, the air grew colder, the shadows seeming to writhe and twist around them like living things. John's agency-trained senses were on high alert, but Ava's presence seemed to anchor him, keeping him grounded in the face of the growing unease. At the bottom of the staircase, a door creaked open, revealing a narrow chamber filled with ancient machinery. In the center of the room, a massive clockwork device hummed and whirred, its gears and pendulums moving in a hypnotic rhythm. "Behold, the time engine," Tom declared, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "A doorway to other eras, other worlds. The key to unlocking the secrets of the anomaly." John's eyes narrowed. This was no natural phenomenon. This was human ingenuity, twisted and perverted to serve some unknown purpose. Ava's hand brushed against his, sending a jolt of electricity through his system. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, her eyes locked on the time engine. John's gaze followed hers, and he felt the world spinning off its axis. The device pulsed with an otherworldly power, drawing him in with an inexorable force. "What's the purpose of this device?" John demanded, his voice firm despite the creeping sense of unease. Tom's smile was a death's mask. "You'll find out soon enough, John Markson. The doorway is opening, and you, my friend, are about to step through it." The air in the chamber seemed to vibrate with an electric tension as Tom's words hung in the air. John's instincts screamed at him to pull back, to retreat from the abyss that yawned before him. But Ava's hand still lingered on his, her touch sparking a connection that ran deeper than mere companionship. "What do you mean?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tom's eyes seemed to bore into his very soul. "The anomaly is a doorway, John. A doorway to other eras, other worlds. And you, my friend, are the key." The time engine's hum grew louder, the machinery whirring to a frenetic pace. John felt the chamber spinning around him, the shadows deepening into dark, bottomless pools. Suddenly, the device emitted a blinding flash of light, and John felt himself lifted off the ground, suspended in a vortex of swirling colors. Ava's hand still clung to his, a steady anchor in the maelstrom. As the light faded, John stumbled, disoriented, into a world unlike any he had ever known. The sky above was a deep, burning crimson, and the air reeked of ozone and smoke. In the distance, a city sprawled, its towers twisted, nightmarish spires that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. Ava's hand still clung to his, a gentle reminder that he was not alone in this strange, new world. "Where are we?" John asked, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. Ava's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly intensity. "We're in the chronosphere, John, and we're not alone." As she spoke, figures emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted, inhuman. John's hand instinctively went to his pistol, but it was gone, lost in the vortex of the time engine. He was alone, unarmed, and adrift in a world that defied the laws of reality. And Ava, the enigmatic woman who had brought him to this place, stood at his side, her eyes burning with a fire that seemed to pierce the very fabric of time itself.